Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today, we're going to be talking about the newest album from Lana Del Rey, called Lust for Life. I really don't know why I keep giving Lana Del Rey second chances, because that's really how it feels to me, at least from my point of view. Ever since she won me over fairly early on with video games, I've been willing to listen to her overlong, dreary, melodramatic projects with a vague hope that somewhere deep down she managed to recapture some of that magic and emotive presence that she showed on that first song. I listened through Born to Die's Uneven Stumbling. I suffered through Ultraviolence's insufferable baby voice crooning and horrible writing. I struggled through more of the polished gleam but still awful writing of Honeymoon, all with the vague hope that if unable to make anything with dramatic pathos, she'd at least make the melodrama compelling. Now keep in mind, it's not like I couldn't find other singers in this mold that could pull off this sort of Baroque pop, because they are out there. Julia Holter, she's my go-to example. Seriously, check out her last album, Have You in My Wilderness. It's amazing. But you know what, just take a half step towards folk or country or indie rock and you'll find dozens of singers who are in that mold. Many of them who are much more compelling singers and much better songwriters. But you know what? I kept hoping that Lana Del Rey would pull something off. There's always been that trace of potential there. And believe it or not, I had a lot of high hopes that Lust for Life would be the record that finally got there. The lead-off single, Love, was by far one of her best singles, hell, one of her best songs. And if she could deliver more tracks in that vein that could tap into sentiments that felt more fully realized or borderline populist or at least well-framed, she could have something really special here. Of course, this was also an album where she was bringing on many more producers, along with guest appearances from A$AP Rocky and Stevie Nicks and Sean Lennon and The Weeknd, which could make sense in context, and then Playboi Carti, which absolutely did not make sense at all. And it was also by far her longest album, which considering the pace and tempo would almost certainly lead to things dragging pretty hard, but hey, the hope was there this could be good, so what'd I find on Lust for Life? Well, honestly, this is one of those records where there is definitely a part of me that wants to praise it. It's got some of Lana Del Rey's best songs since Born to Die. For the most of this record, she's sticking for a vocal register that actually flatters her delivery for once, and there are definitely signs that her writing is finally moving in the right direction. In other words, at least portions of this album have much more replay value to me than anything off of Ultraviolence or Honeymoon. But at the same time, it's only in pieces, because around it we've got an increasingly disconnected, overlong, and occasionally insufferable set of songs that makes the album experience as a whole a lot harder for me to sit through. And while Lana Del Rey's projects have always felt somewhat indulgent, without the same overwrought cushion of melodrama and the framing that could occasionally save or even elevate some of her previous work, here just kind of starts to test my patience, because it's not really as melodramatic as before, and yeah, we'll get to that. But before we get into it in detail, let's talk about Lana Del Rey herself. And honestly, at this point, you're either on board with her semi-detached, distant, heavily multi-track delivery, or you're not. And for the most part, when she sticks to her lower register, there's actually some body to her voice, and I do appreciate it. It's by no means exceptional. Forget just coming out of that Nicole Atkins review, a Baroque pop and soul singer who could actually really sing. I can rattle off a whole slew of artists who don't nearly need the same production support and sound a fair bit better regardless, but again, I already brought that up. But at least Lana Del Rey, she stopped doing that baby voice cooing thing that always seemed to highlight her off-key moments or how frail her voice could get in her upper register. Even a song like Love, which is handily one of the best of her career, it still has a hook where she can't entirely carry the final lines with one breath. But hey, this sort of delivery, it can work with the right vocal production, like on 13 Beaches, or God Bless America and all the beautiful women in it, or on Heroin. Hell, Get Free actually had some real promise to it before the overdubs came in way too loud and way too flat on the hook, which really did nothing for the atmosphere. And then you get the question of her diction. Look, I actually think that the writing on In My Feelings is a step in the right direction, and we will get to that. But the breathy overdubs there, they're a complete mess, I gotta be honest. But I think it's very telling that when you give songs for Lana Del Rey opposite Sean Lennon, the son of John and Yoko, or the legendary Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac herself, with a voice that certainly has carried the scars of time on it, and she really sells and then subverts beautiful people, beautiful problems, Lana Del Rey, she just kind of fades in comparison, maybe just being a little bit too starstruck by her performers. Hell, she even mentions that on the lines of Tomorrow Never Came, which completely shatters the verisimilitude of the song, but okay, whatever. But you know what, that's before we get to the more hip-hop leaning songs like Lust for Life with The Weeknd. And as I said on Billboard Breakdown, neither artist is at their best on that song. And then the tracks with A$AP Rocky and Playboi Carti, and look, this is where we have to talk about the instrumentation and the production of these tracks, which has somewhat made a return to the hip-hop or trip-hop inflected touches that I never really thought worked on any of Lana Del Rey's albums, now less so than ever. We live in an era where more often than not, any mainstream pop song will pick up a trap hi-hat or snare, or a thicker, lumbering, low-end synth or bassy beat. The only difference here is that they'll have more gauzy layers piled on with less actual momentum or tempo, and for some bizarre reason, have even less of the lush orchestration and strings and horns that I actually thought worked on parts of Honeymoon and Born to Die. Now, you know what, the production does kind of work on some songs. Love, as I've already said, the deeper chirping and piano-accented darkness of 13 Beaches, the watery guitar and organ opposite a thicker bass groove anchoring Get Free, probably the best part of that song, the more restrained, drippy guitars on God Bless America and all the beautiful women in it, the more elegant piano and mellotron behind Beautiful People, Beautiful Problems, and Change, the darker, more ghostly tones of Heroin that actually make the atmosphere work pretty well, and especially the warbling 60s psychedelic touch on Tomorrow Never Came. Again, the song is blatant worship of that era of late 60s rock, but for once, actually kind of stick the landing for me. But you know what, I'm sorry. When I start hearing those familiar hi-hat progressions and dreary bassy beats and stuttering snares, it takes a sound that I already find tedious and overdone and makes it exasperatingly bleary and dull. Summer Bummer is by far the worst offender, but really, despite their best efforts, A$AP Rocky and especially Playboi Carti just have no solid chemistry with Lana Del Rey on these instrumentals, and it's more because of her languid delivery than it doesn't fit on them. The best case scenario is with The Weeknd and the slightly heavier synths of the title track. You thank Max Martin for that one. But even then, it doesn't play to either of their strengths, which for The Weeknd is more tight grooves and some intensity in his delivery, and for Lana Del Rey, well, okay, I'll be the first to admit it's not always clear here, and this does take us to a conversation about the writing and themes on this album, where I have traditionally, especially on YouTube, been one of the harshest ever critics of Lana Del Rey. And you know what? I'll say it. There are measurable improvements on this album, mostly coming through in her seeming to build up some more self-awareness about what might actually be good for her in the long run. I've already talked about the heady but kind of artificial rush that actually kind of works in the themes on Love back on Billboard Breakdown, but it seems like she's finally stopped glamorizing stupid or bad relationships for the wrong reasons. It doesn't mean that she's not having the relationships, but on a song like In My Feelings, it's actually framed properly, this time showing how toxic and frustrating such feelings can be. And while there's always been a palpable side of self-love to a lot of Lana Del Rey's writing, 13 Beaches is everything High by the Beach wasn't. A song that plays the love-hate relationship with the press, but actually goes a step deeper to show how much that she actually craves that attention. It's more of a feedback relationship. Heroin, another good example. For as much as the song reflects the listless haze of a bad relationship, drug abuse, a forbidding and hostile atmosphere, or maybe just the hate in the summer, or maybe all four, she at least realizes by the end of that song she's sick of that murk. She's got to get out of there. Hell, Get Free might crib its main metaphor from a 2009 Alice in Chains record, but a sign that she's stepping into brighter territory that does open up some new creative doors for her. It's not a bad note to end the album on. I actually thought was pretty good. But the fact that so many said metaphors are so plainly cribbed from obvious sources, be they from obvious references to certain music, indie or otherwise, or broad strokes of Americana iconography, it leads to my first problem with the writing. When you strip out a lot of the melodrama, in some cases a fair amount of the pomp and glamour, the lack of original symbolism and storytelling can make these songs feel all the more insubstantial, more iconography than actual narrative here. Granted, that's very telling of one of the main conflicts has always underscored so much of her best music and really a lot of her worst music at its core. Lana Del Rey is a woman wishing to live in a rose-colored vintage past and now coming to slowly reconcile with what the present actually means. But it's this conflict that rises from just subtext into the main text on a good chunk of this album. And man, it frustrates me to no end how so much of it is framed, or how slapdash some of that self-awareness feels, like opposite A$AP Rocky on Groupie Love, which disregards the reality of what actually happened to too many young women in that scene, and to be brutally honest, still happens today. In too many cases, just swap out the term groupies for Instagram models for another submissive relationship dynamic that she loves so much. But you know what? That's hip-hop, and Lana Del Rey has always seemed like a woman more interested in the coolness of the genre than actually understanding its reality. And hey, that's ultimately her life, she can do what she wants. Where it becomes a bit more of an issue is in the language of songs like When the World Was at War, We Were Dancing, which frames an American political collapse where they'll just ignore it because they were dancing, just like they did the last time America was in danger. Which, along with the old-fashioned opulence reflected in some of the verses, shows just enough privilege to avoid the real problems of the world and suffer no consequences even if American institutions go down in flames. After all, why else include the line for the guys, "Don't try to be funny, other people might not understand." Not that said boisterous privilege is bad, but other people just won't get it. It's how you also get a song like God Bless America and all the beautiful women in it, her big female empowerment anthem. Bit of a surprise coming from Lana Del Rey. But then you see the verses about being taken in and embraced by presumably male lovers, or the final hook that changes the main line of the hook from women to people. So much for that big female empowerment anthem, eh? And here's the thing. Lana Del Rey has always sounded much more comfortable living in the opulent glamour of the past, where she didn't have a lot of agency. And when faced with the reality that demands engagement and agency beyond just submissive demurring, you get a song like Change, with lines like, "Lately, I've been thinking it's someone else's job to care. Who am I to sympathize when no one else gives a damn?" Which gets even worse on the hook, where she admits that she'll accept the change, maybe by the time something is done. Not by her. Accept it, appropriate it, and after all, what's the difference? After all, who doesn't want to take credit for eventually being on the winning side? Right? But you know what? Even despite all those issues, I can freely admit this is Lana Del Rey's best record since Born to Die. It's got songs I can actually tolerate, and I still think Love is one of her best. Her writing might occasionally drive me off the wall, and every time that she touches on hip-hop, it's really cringeworthy. But despite all of that and being entirely too long for its own damn good, it's got moments of quality that I do respect, and a few guest stars that actually kind of stick the landing here. It's easily her least cohesive project to date, and I'd argue that its issues are more visible in comparison to previous albums, but you know what, so are its strengths, and there are more of them than I expected. As such, I'm giving this a 5 out of 10, and really only a recommendation to Lana Del Rey fans, as I think you'll probably dig this a lot, but otherwise, it's a long record, so a little bit hard to recommend to newcomers. But you know what, check out a few songs if you're curious. Turns out that giving Lana Del Rey that next chance actually paid off a little bit more this time around. Let's see that trend continue. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I know this review is going to piss off all the Lana Del Rey fans. Polls right there, get it out, have fun. Beyond that, if you want to buy the album, links in the description below. Got anything else about my presentation? I'd be happy to hear about it. And if you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process, link to my Patreon is right over there. Where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week you guys get to add albums or even movies to that schedule. More details right there, but till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.